Good afternoon, as always, MLP fans. Today we're going to be looking at the color combination yellow-purple. Since I run yellow-purple competitively, the original plan here was to just show you guys my tournament deck, but I decided against it. About 9 people have asked me to make a deck around Princess Celestia and Luna. So I thought it'd be a lot more fun to make a theme deck around the two sisters rather than actually just showing my competitive deck, because it's really not that different from a lot of other competitive yellow-purple decks. Keep in mind as you watch this that I sacrificed some of the competitiveness to keep true to the theme. Like I'm running a full set of Princess Celestias, a full set of Princess Lunas, I'm running a full set of Royal Guidance, I'm running a full set of Sun and Moon, and I'm running Counterlot Voice. Keep in mind, it's not a bad deck by any means, otherwise I wouldn't be showing it to you. It's a really fun version of yellow and purple that uses a lot of the control elements from both colors. I also threw in some very competitive staples that help it keep up in the metagame. So if you're a Luna Celestia fan, hopefully this deck gives you some ideas. That's about enough talking. I present to you my Royal Council deck. As always, if you're just here to net deck the deck list, then here it is, please enjoy. I only ask that you leave me a like on your way out. For the rest of us, we're going to take a deeper look, but first, you're going to notice something kind of strange with my list. There are no troublemakers, not even Yellow Parasprite, which I've put in all of my decks so far. I don't know guys, troublemakers just weren't doing it for me in this deck. The deck's win ratios went up way higher after I took the troublemakers out. So maybe after this video you should work around the numbers and see if there's a way you can fit troublemakers in. But this is my video, and we're going to look at my build, okay? The main we're going to be using for this deck is Princess Luna Dreamcatcher, which is the ultra rare in the Counterlot Knights set if you don't know already. She kind of doesn't have a flip condition. You can just kind of pay 3 to turn her over whenever, and then when she's on her flipped side, you can search your deck for an event and put it in your hand. Better than that, at the beginning of your main phase, you can look the top card of your deck and reveal it, and if you can reveal a card in your hand with a higher power than the revealed card, you can put that card in your hand as well and turn this card back over. Some people argue about whether or not this is a good card. I can't really say. It doesn't do anything to win you face-offs, which is kind of the main point of the game right now. But for 3 action points, you could do a lot worse. First of all, when you flip it over, you can search your deck for any event card and put it in your hand, and that gives you a lot of options. We're running plenty of good events to make sure that you always have a search target for this card when you choose to flip it over. Most of the events you're going to be searching for in your deck have a power of 5, so when you flip over the top card of your deck during the main phase for her other effect, chances are you can always reveal the 5 power card that you got, and you'll be able to put the other card in your hand. Paying 3 to search your deck for a specific card and put it in your hand and then also be able to draw an extra card is admittedly not the greatest, but it's still pretty good, especially since you can repeat it over and over again. Her home limit is 4 on both sides. She doesn't have good power on either side, so chances are she's never going to leave your home, but that's both a good and a bad thing. It's a bad thing because she can't really help in face-offs, but it's a good thing because you never have to worry about paying the 2 to move her. Whether or not you think this is a good card really doesn't matter. It's the one we're going to use for this deck because I feel it's the one with the most potential. 3 All-Team Organizer because our deck is very expensive, especially with the flipping Luna. So if you use this card, it kind of takes off some of that burden. If you have one of these in play, you can use Luna's effect at 2 instead of 3, and that's pretty good. Overall, I would never run a deck like this and not run 3 All-Team Organizer Twilight. It's just too good in this metagame. You guys can say whatever you want about Truly Outrageous Rarity. I know it's a good card, but personally, I've always been a Spring Forward fan. I feel like Spring Forward is the most powerful pony in the game. She's a one-man army. If your opponent only has one singular pony at a problem and you pay the 3 to put her there, she's a 4 power, so you're only paying 3 for 4, and chances are your opponent's going to have a lot more than one pony out there. If your opponent has 2 ponies out there, then it's 3 for 6 power. If your opponent has 3 ponies out there, then it's 3 for 8 power. And on top of that, she has Studious. You win those face-offs, you get more action points, you can flip Luna more, you can play more higher level cards from your hand. It's just so good. I love Spring Forward. I feel like it should be in every purple deck. We're running a full playset of 3 here because the deck itself doesn't have a whole lot of backbone, but if we can get at least one Spring Forward on the field, we have enough power to keep up in face-offs while also putting our control elements into work. I don't know if I would run Princess Luna Nightmare at a full playset of 3 normally, but to keep with the spirit of the deck, we're going to do it here. In a Princess Luna Celestia deck, we want Princess Luna and Celestia to be winning a lot of our battles, and honestly, Princess Luna is a darn good card. You put it in play and you frighten a friend. It costs 2 to unfrighten a friend, so your opponent is losing 2 action points immediately, or they're out a really good card. Either way, this card way more than makes up for itself, even though it costs 1 more point than it has in power. I still feel like its color requirement is a little ridiculous, but if you can pull it off, then this is a great card. Most purple decks should probably either run Bright Bulb or Blue Moon. Either one is really good. I like Bright Bulb because it actually has some kind of effect, but honestly, if you're finding this card a little too costly, then running Blue Moon is completely fine. One of my favorite things to do, though, is to put Bright Bulb on one problem and Spring Forward on a different problem, and then my opponent has to choose between making Spring Forward more powerful or putting it back home with Bright Bulb's effect and having to pay to move it next turn. This little lockdown combo can create quite a problem for your opponent early in the game, and I love it. Lady Justice isn't quite as powerful in the metagame as she once used to be, but we're still going to run her here because we have to keep up with that 4 purple color requirement. We also need something other than Bright Bulb that will help fix our colors because our main character is not going to help us very much. It has 1 purple power, and at most it can get up to 2 purple power, which isn't good. So we need something other than Bright Bulb to keep up color requirements, and I think Lady Justice can fit that bill just fine. Plus, if you can get Lady Justice and Spring Forward on the same problem, then some pretty hilarious stuff happens. I stand by what I said before. Every single deck that is running purple needs to tech in 1 Spike Assistant Librarian, because it's one of those things that you don't have to pull it off. It's not going to be central to any strategy, but when you can pull it off, it's very, very powerful. Exhaust this card, look at the bottom 2 cards of your deck, and you can put one of them on top of your deck. This has a lot of different applications. If you flip something with 5 power during a face-off, then you can have that same 5 power card during every single face-off for the rest of the game. Or if you look at the bottom 2 cards of your deck, and one of them is pretty good, then you can just pay 1 action point to draw into that good card. There are too many applications to Spike Assistant Librarian to not run it at least 1. That is my argument. There are now 3 different Princess Celestias that we can play with, and this is the one that I'm going with. It's the very first Princess Celestia ever released. Even though it's an ultra rare, nobody really likes it, so it's actually really cheap and really easy to get a hold of, and we're going to be using it for this deck. Some of you are going to be looking at it like, oh, why would you run this one? There are better ones out now. Both of the ones in Counterlot Knights are way better than this one. The 5 that you have to pay for it is bad, its 3 color requirement is bad, and it really doesn't do anything that useful. I understand all of that, but this is still my favorite of the Princess Celestias, and here is why. The fact that she costs 5 can be mitigated with All-Team Organizer Twilight, and she also more than makes up for that effect later in the game. First, she has Studious, so if you win face-offs by putting like her, Lady Justice, and maybe Spring Forward on the same problem, then she gets back an action point. Do this twice, and she's made up 2 of the action points you had to put into paying for her. She has Swift, so every single time you're moving her, you're only paying 1 to move 3 power onto a problem, and that's going to save you action points in the long run because the other Celestias don't have Swift. And she also power-ups Yellow Friends, so if you have to go out there with your Guidance Counselor Fluttershy's or your Eagles or your Blue Jays, then she's actually really cool. Let's say you only have 2 Yellow Friends at a problem. You pay 1 to move her because she has Swift, and all of a sudden, that problem goes up by 5 power, because she gives 3 and then 1 more for each yellow friend. If I just can't convince you that this is a good card, then I would recommend taking this one out for the 3 cost 3 power that gets +2 power during the first turn she's put in play, and can also immediately fight a Troublemaker when she's put into play, because that one gets rid of Parasprites, it gets rid of Mana Cores. It's actually a really good card as well. This is just the one that I prefer. Blue Jay, cheap, easy, 2 power, helps fix color requirements, yada yada, good card. Guidance Counselor, because Guidance Counselor makes your opponent go so slow. One of my favorite things to do with purple-yellow is make it so that I'm playing All-Team Organizers to ramp my action points, and Guidance Counselor Fluttershy to slow down my opponent. It creates this huge gap between how many action points you're getting and your opponent's getting. There's also an interesting little lockdown combo you can do if you happen to get 2 of these in your hand. Chances are you never will, but if you do happen to get 2 of these in your hand, you can play both of them near the beginning of the game when you and your opponent are both still getting 2 action points, and you can exhaust both of them every time it becomes your opponent's turn so that your opponent never gets any more action points. This is a pretty cheap stall-out tactic, and you can end up locking your opponent down for like 4, 5, 6 turns just on 0 action points, not solving any problems, just filling up your field and getting a bunch of action points. And it's pretty funny. Of course we're running Eagle, because Eagle is Eagle. We're obviously going to run something that has pumped, which nothing else in the deck does, so nothing will get in the way of this card's pumped, and can use that pumped to move for free, saving us more action points. On to our events. Critter Cavalry wins face-offs. Back Where You Began is the most powerful move event in the game. Royal Canterlot Voice is also a really good movement card. And because we're running it in a Princess Luna deck, it's always pretty much going to be free. The only thing I don't really like about it is its color requirement, which is why we're only running it at 2 instead of 3. Yay is free and win face-offs and has 5 power. So yes, and yes, and yes. Only running it at 2 because for chances are we're not going to have a whole bunch of things on one problem. This isn't an aggro deck, so we're not going to have enough to really get the full benefit of this, but it's still free power. Who doesn't want free power? Royal Guidance is actually incredibly broken in this deck. The reason being our main character can search this out during like the first 3 or 4 turns. As soon as we can get one of these in our hand, then we can pretty much play anything in the deck. It's pretty lolzy. You just save up some action points and flip Luna, and as soon as you do, then you can pretty much immediately play Princess Celestia as your very first card, or an Eagle, or a Guidance Counselor, or a Nightmare. It's just too versatile. It makes the color requirements not even matter anymore. As a quick side note, I didn't do any testing with this, but I see now that it might actually be more prudent to run this at 1 or 2. I do like having one of these in my opening hand. It makes the game go a lot smoother and it's a lot more unpredictable, but if push came to shove, you could always just use Princess Luna's effect to search this out as soon as you need it. So if you're going to start making changes to the deck, that would be my first recommendation. Put Royal Guidance back down to 1 so that you can just search for it whenever you need it and not have to worry about it clogging up your hand later in the game. And finally, to round us out, we're running 3 copies of Sun and Moon. In a deck like this where we have so many events, getting to flip extra cards is actually really powerful because chances are we're going to be flipping into 1 or 2 or 3 events. Since Princess Celestia has Swift, it's very easy to get her onto a problem, and then you just have to pay 2 to move either Nightmare or your main character onto a problem, and good times to be had. Another fun thing about cards like this is if you have a character with Pumped, you can start putting multiple cards under them with the Pumped effect. Overall, these cards aren't that super great in the metagame right now, but if you're going to be running a theme deck, I think you should take it all the way, so I'm definitely running 3 Sun and Moon. Our final card is going to be Picnic Lunch. This was actually a very tough decision to make. See, I like Picnic Lunch, I like it a lot, but I actually liked Trixie Hat even more. Personally, if I were going to build this deck and start running it competitively, I would put Trixie Hat in instead of Picnic Lunch, but Picnic Lunch gave me a lot more versatility, I found, and getting 3 yellow friends in play isn't that difficult. Especially with all of the movement. See, Princess Celestia only costs 1 to move, so that's 1 friend you can get there very easily, and then you also have Eagles, which can pretty much move for free. So I almost always had Picnic Lunch's effect up, but I would still take Trixie Hat over Picnic Lunch if I were going to start running this deck competitively. Just keep that in mind. For our problem deck, we're going to be running 2 May the Best Pet Win, because who doesn't want a free Eagle? Ancient Research, the best starting problem in the game. Wrapping Up Winter, because getting those 2 free action points is awesome, and if your opponent just happens to get them, then you can just Guidance Counselor them away. It's not a big deal. Hungry Hungry House Guests, because we're not running anything with resources attached, so it doesn't really affect us any, and if our opponent's running something like a super silly outfit deck or something, then whatever, can't move anything here. We also want cards with low requirements for us because we don't really want to have to keep up with super high requirements. We just want to put some stuff here really simply and get the 1 bonus point, and then sit here and get the free point every turn. And last but not least, Bunny Breakout, because it's an easy problem to solve and we can just sit on it and get the point every turn. That's about it for the deck. Don't worry too much about not doing anything the first few turns. This is what a lot of people would call a burst deck, where you're trying to save up like 10, 15-ish action points and then do everything at once. When you're searching your deck for events, look for something that will actually help you in your current situation. If your opponent has way too many friends or a very troublesome friend on one of the problems, then use something to get rid of it. If the color requirements in your hand are just way too much, search your deck for a Royal Guidance. If you know you're going to be going into a face-off using either Celestia, Luna, or both, then search your deck for a Sun and Moon. It's very easy, just read the situation and get what you need. Spring Forward wins games. If you can get that on your opponent's problem, then you can set yourself up for like 2 or 3 turns because your opponent most likely won't be playing a bunch of stuff there. Rarity Truly Outrageous pretty much just beats this deck. I haven't really figured out a way around it using these cards, so just keep that in mind. If you see your opponent is playing white, then you need to be ready for the Truly Outrageous Rarity. Just save up action points, try to keep your opponent down with Guidance Counselor, and save up as many points as you can so you can control the board as soon as you're ready. Face-offs and double face-offs and getting those bonus points for winning them is really the only way you're going to beat Rarity Truly Outrageous, so be ready to do that. Oh man, this video is going to be over 16 minutes long. I think that's about enough talking out of me. Okay, if you have any thoughts on the deck, then please leave them in the comments section below. I love reading your feedback. Please leave this video a like. Those things really do help us out a whole bunch if you liked the deck, and dislike it if you didn't like it. You know, whatever. Not gonna ruin my night. And finally, if you found this video by accident, then subscribe to stay up to date on the latest Kudo news. Until next time!